Welcome to Compassionate Conversations. The goal of our podcast is to explore topics related to serious illness. And Core Compassionate Care exists to be a supportive presence for life's journey. We can provide care and support wherever a patient may be on their journey with a serious illness. And Core Compassionate Care began as Hospice of Rockingham County in 1987. While our name changed in late 2023, we are still the local provider the community has always known. We'll always be there because we've always been here. Welcome to this edition of Compassionate Conversations. Today we're going to dive into the act of caregiving, but specifically what we are going to call the hidden weight of caregiving. The physical, the emotional, maybe even the financial stressors that sometimes go unseen. Now, certainly, caregiving is an act of love, but it can come with its own challenges, right? And some different stressors. So joining me today to help me unpack this is Kayla O'Boyle. Kayla is an LCSW, but also our Director of Support Services here. Aaron Rushing is also joining us today. He is a social worker that is actually part of the support services team here at Ancora. So thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So what do we mean by the hidden weight of caregiving, or what would that look like day to day?
Yeah, so I think the hidden weight of caregiving could look like juggling multiple tasks at one time for a caregiver. It's the emotional labor and constant worrying that some of us have when caring for our loved ones, that hidden behind the scenes emotional toll that not all of us talk about. It could be things like scheduling appointments, always juggling the calendar at home, and just those day-to-day tasks that others may not see.
I've always had the thought that, of course, caregiving could be the hardest job that anybody is ever going to have. And the majority of the time, when somebody finds themselves in that role, there hasn't really been any official training, right?
Right.
But some of the things you were just talking about, Kayla, life goes on.
Yes.
So it's not just juggling all those things for the person you're caring for. The caregiver has to have those things too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And plenty of our patients and their caregivers are juggling either multiple folks, or a lot of them still have full-time jobs.
Right.
And then their own sickness or appointments as well. So it's not just the invisibleness of it, it's life in general.
It absolutely is. And, things that we might take for granted if we weren't a caregiver, like even going to the grocery store. How do you time things like that if it's a situation where the person you're caring for can't be left alone?
Yeah.
And, you brought up a very good point of people usually have full-time jobs in addition, which might even bring about the need for maybe another caregiver that's needed when that person has to go to work. Yeah. So life goes on, but that can get very, very heavy. I think about when you were talking about all the things to worry and to juggle, the words decision fatigue came to mind. How would you explain what decision fatigue is?
I mean, just like anything else that you have, we put a lot of emphasis on CEOs and their decision making and all of those things, but they have a whole team of people to follow through with whatever goes on. When you have to juggle your whole life plus your patient's life plus your loved ones' visits and resources and all of the different things like that, you're looking at, you might answer the phone 5-10 times just in an afternoon, a day. And so, you're making those constant decisions and trying to keep up with it, and then putting it all on the schedule and having all of those things together. And so you're just day after day making decision after decision after decision. And a lot of people don't even realize how many decisions they make on a daily basis in the first place.
Right.
So doubling it, tripling it makes a big, big difference.
Absolutely.
I would add to that too, the anxiety and sometimes the guilt around decision making when there's others involved in the familial system or outside factors. because sometimes the decisions we have to make, not everyone will agree with, and that can
Exactly.
be a heavy burden to bear.
Absolutely. And that makes such a good point. While I was thinking about wanting us to touch on what are some of the feelings that caregivers may experience, and of course guilt being one of them, but a lot of feelings that other people may not see. So how can we kind of counsel, I guess, caregivers that might be listening? What would they expect to feel?
I think there are really two big ones that I've come in contact with that aren't expressed as emotions, but are.
Yeah.
A big one is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of your own inability to do. Fear is just such a big part of, and it's just that not knowing more than
Yes.
anything else. And then you can't know, because if there's one thing we all can agree on, is we never know when the time is going to be coming. And so it's very
Absolutely.
hard to plan around something you don't know, and emergencies. And then another one is the anger and the frustration that comes along with all of the changing circumstances. And those changing circumstances can happen really quickly.
Yeah.
And so that the anger and fear are big ones that aren't really approached or haven't been approached verbally from my patients and caregivers so far.
And you think about fear and guilt. I mean, fear and anger goes right back to the guilt.
Yeah.
So then you can kind of get into this
Self-fulfilling cycle.
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
yes. And so talk about a burden. When we started off talking about the hidden weight, doesn't that just sound heavy?
Yes.
Fear and anger. And
Yeah.
what about somebody that might have feelings of anger towards the person that they're caring for?
Well, if you think about that, how often do you have family dynamics that are rough in the first place? No one's family's perfect, and
Right.
some people are not the nicest, and yet that doesn't matter
Right.
for the most part. When you have to be a caregiver, you have to figure out how to deal with that within everything else going on.
Right.
So yeah.
And more than likely, or at least my experience has been, they're feeling anger, and it's kind of being directed towards the person. They don't want to feel that, but it's really the situation and what it all represents,
A lot of
right?
displacement.
A lot of displacement. Yes, absolutely. What about isolation? Let's talk about that just for a little bit.
Yeah, so all of that anger, fear, anxiety, guilt can back some folks into a corner of feeling isolated and being somewhat reclusive, in just not going out and reaching out for help and talking to their friends and family and their support system, whatever that may look like, just because of the weight of it all and the heavy burden that it can feel sometimes.
Yeah. What would you add to that?
Repeat the question one more time for
Well,
me.
we're talking about isolation that caregivers may feel.
Yeah, so it's the weight of the world, and it's on you, and it's constant, and you want what's best for your loved one or whoever you're caring for, and that weight feels like no one else could possibly understand what's going on or what I'm going through, and so you feel like you're just on this island of responsibility, and that in itself can be exhausting, and that leads to more frustration, which leads to another cycle of just add into that fear and anger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
In addition to that, I want to attach shame with guilt and
Yes.
shame with some going back to, there may be resentment for having to even be a caregiver and in that role,
Absolutely.
and that can make you isolate some as well.
And sometimes in our hospice service line, we see large families, or you've at least got more than one child, right? Let's say if it's a child being a caregiver for a parent, but it might be just the one that is actually doing the majority of the caregiving. So then that really does bring up a lot of feelings that might not be the best, and tons of family dynamics. And so, so much comes from that, because it's not just an emotional thing. So I want to get to how maybe we can be supportive in our hospice service line of these caregivers. But before we do that, I kind of want to normalize what some caregivers may feel as far as physical symptoms. and you can either draw from your own experience with the patients that you see, but what kind of toll does caregiving take on the body?
The biggest one that I see over and over and over again is just straight fatigue. You don't get enough sleep.
Right.
Those decision-making things that you have to do that's work. It's work every day, day in,
Right.
day out. And it just all adds up little by little. And then you don't get as much sleep because your sleep might be interrupted because you can't get the entire night, or you don't have a care.
Right.
Emergencies happen, and it just adds up over and over
Yeah.
against time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And not getting enough sleep can manifest into physical symptoms like chronic headaches or
Yes.
cold-like symptoms, whatever it may be. So.
Yeah. So our stress hormones definitely go into overdrive, right?
Yeah.
Which makes us more susceptible to every physical illness you can name.
Right.
You know, here we are right in the middle of cold and flu season, and which seems to be everywhere. So if that were to take place, let's say then the caregiver gets sick. So here's another layer.
Yeah.
You know, we gotta make a decision. We gotta figure out
Right.
who else can step in. What can we do? What about, we've talked about some physical, we've talked about emotional. What about the financial pressures of caregiving?
I think the main one that I've recognized is the taking time off of work. For caregivers that do still have a job, having to tap into PTO time or other forms of savings accounts, FMLA, that sort of thing is a big financial stressor.
Yeah, huge.
And another one is just the lack of infrastructure surrounding our field in general, but healthcare as a whole in
Right.
the United States it's expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter. Your health is expensive. And for a lot of Americans, that margin is really, really slim. And so how are you going to handle that? Or what's it going to look like? Or, you know, I was waiting on this property to do X, Y, Z, and I couldn't get there. And now I'm in the hole here and a hole there. And it adds up.
It all adds up. Yeah. So I mentioned support services team, right? With our hospice service line in particular, let's talk about ways that you guys, when I say you guys, so social workers in particular, but certainly chaplains are part of your team too. But how does our interdisciplinary team support caregivers with our hospice patients?
Yeah, I would say that first we meet people where they are. We go into homes and we assess what is the top priority? What is the main focus, the main goal that we want to work on?
Right.
That may look like caregiver support, hiring private caregivers, applying for programs like Medicaid, nursing home placement, Meals on Wheels, FMLA, just whatever the case may be, that's where we want to start. We want to figure out what's important to you so that we can help shift the visits and guide the wishes and the desires of the patient and the family.
Awesome.
Absolutely. And, you know, our medical team, our nursing staff and our aides are phenomenal. And they are there every week, and they're doing a lot of the brunt work because folks are dying, and it is a medical condition. But on top of that, it's the care management, the coordination, the emotional support seems to be a big one. A lot of folks push down or suppress, and they don't or can't express how they truly feel. And so just providing that outlet seems to be one of our big jobs. And then resource management and coordination of those resources. I've heard it responded as a godsend a couple times so far. So
Absolutely. You know, I'm so grateful that you mentioned all of the things that our social workers do, because sometimes and this Saturday I have a wonderful opportunity to go have a speaking engagement. We talk about all of the things that we offer. But sometimes I think social workers get a bad rap in that meaning that there's a label, like there's a certain, I don't know if I want to use the word bias, that sounds a little strong, but something comes to mind with the general public when you say social worker. But in hospice in particular, it is so different. It is much more that emotional support, the resource management, you know, all the things that you guys just listed off just for resources. The general public doesn't know that these things even exist, much less how to coordinate those.
Right.
So to be able to have you guys step in as part of our whole interdisciplinary team in what is such a stressful time for them, think about the decision fatigue that all of that could help
Right.
alleviate. I mean, talk about a burden lifted.
Right.
Yeah, I would say godsend. I would agree. Now, I am totally biased, but I still would agree. I would totally agree. So, before we completely leave the caregiver stress, what would that look like in everyday life? You know, I think about me, and if I was having to work full time, and if I was having to take care of my mom, let's say, who happens to be a type 1 diabetic, so immediately all of the things she would have to do for that, or I would have to potentially do for her, that would come first, right? And then second. So I would be concerned about my own forgetfulness. You know, we've touched on fear and shame. So
Right.
what am I doing with my own irritability? Is it coming out in places I don't want it to? But what else would you think? What does it look like?
A big one is the weight of just the life-changing. You're making life-changing decisions for your
Right.
your loved one, and that's every day. You're worried. You're on hospice, 6 months or less. You know that the day when they're no longer going to be with us is coming. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be next week, but it's coming. And so you're always kind of on edge, waiting for all of those phone calls I mentioned earlier. You never know if that's going to be, you know, your caregiver or the nurse who's visiting saying, hey, mom passed or dad passed, or, you know, and so that heightened sense of anxiety just sticks with everyone that I've met so far. There's just an extra layer of that, regardless of how effective or how comfortable or how much they can give.
Right.
It's just that extra layer of anxiety that a lot of people just don't have and can't imagine having.
Right. It is pretty heavy. One thing that I will mention as far as another resource in addition to you guys coming into the home is I would want people to understand that Medicare does offer 5 days of respite care.
Yes.
So if we're taking care of somebody in their home, they can come to Gibson House for 5 days, and Medicare pays for that at 100%. Of course, with the plan of going right back home, but at least that is something that's kind of built in, if you will, to this hospice Medicare benefit that can give those caregivers a break.
Yep.
Yeah, and that a much needed rest. So you know they've got fantastic care 24/7. Certainly doesn't mean that the family can't come. People can come and stay, but I would encourage them to use that time to kind of pour back into themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
And even as amazing as all that is another decision. What if mom passes while I'm there? What if? And so it's just, even with that, I feel guilty for needing rest. So it's as beautiful as it is, and it is amazing, and I love it. And I try to ensure all my clients use it as, you know, as they're eligible for it and when they need it. But even that is, you know, adds to your fatigue and anxiety. So it's just all the time.
One thing that is in my mind as we're talking about all of these things, it certainly wouldn't take away a lot of what we've talked about. But I personally feel like the more families talk early on, the ideal situation would be to have conversations with somebody that you love before you're even sick, before you even have a diagnosis to deal with. I'm a huge proponent of that. I know we all share that, but I would encourage whatever you want for yourself, tell somebody that loves you. So when we get to that point, maybe we have alleviated at least some of, am I doing the right thing? You know, if you can truly say, hey, this is what Dad wanted. And you know that, so some of that guilt, maybe even some of the fear, would be alleviated.
Not some, I'd say a lot. My most, I use the word well-adjusted, and I'm going to go with that, but my most well-adjusted families are the ones who had a plan of action. They knew what they wanted. They knew what their dad wanted, their mom wanted. They knew what the family was going to do, when, where, and how. And so when they came to it, they really get to spend the time with their family that I think is the most important part of hospice. Is we give them that time. Everything comes to you. You know, you're just you have the time. And for the families who have organized and put all that in place already, they get to fully take advantage of that time. It's such a big difference for them.
Yep, I would agree. So that's a whole nother podcast. Right? How to have those conversations.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing I would say is when someone knows that they're dealing with a life-limiting illness, the earlier that we can be invited in as far as the hospice team, the better off everybody's going to be.
Yeah.
You know, we see a lot of people that we have 7 days or less, 14 days or less, or and we are grateful to have the opportunity to serve anytime at all, right? But it is a 6-month benefit.
Right.
And so when we have such a short amount of time, it can almost become like crisis care as opposed to what hospice care is meant to be. So knowing that you do have, you mentioned the nurses, the aides, we've got the social workers, the chaplains, even our volunteers.
Right.
You know, I want everybody to experience this support all the way across the board for as long as possible, so we can try to help these caregivers avoid all of the things that we've talked about.
Yeah.
And the greatest part about the hospice care is that we can come in and help you then.
That's right.
We can't do much in 14 days, but we can do a lot in 6 months.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. So if somebody is listening to us today, somebody that's a caregiver, and they are experiencing some of the things we've talked about, or they just have a feeling of being completely overwhelmed, what is one small step that you would suggest that they could do that might help?
I would encourage you to try your hardest to set aside any fear, shame, guilt that you may be having, and reach out and call someone for help, whether it be us, any of our service lines, our counseling center, our serious illness care program, even hospice, we can point you in the right direction.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything else you would add?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. You're not being rude. No one cares. Ask. Ask.
You will not know if you do not ask.
And there's a lot you don't know. It's a whole different
That's
world.
exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And asking for help is a sign of strength.
Yes.
You know, I think in society, too often that's viewed as a weakness, and it couldn't be further from the truth.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
Did we miss anything? I think we.
Let me see.
Anything else you want to add?
I think the only thing that I'm kind of would want to talk about would be the signs of burnout.
Yes,
if folks
thank
are
you.
feeling burnt out and how that looks.
Okay.
We mentioned earlier it was the fatigue. A lot of that is, you're going to be tired. It is what it is. It's when the conflicts start popping up, when you're incapable of, just regularly speaking to your other loved ones or your family or the doctors, and you're just completely over it and you can't make the decisions anymore. That's burnout. You're burning out. You cannot pour, and as trite as it sounds, you can't pour from an empty cup. Right. And most people don't know when their cup's empty. And so making sure that they have the resources or, are aware that they're not superhuman. No one is. We're all human. And so we each have our limits. And when you hit your limit, you can't do anything about that. Ask for help, find help, do something to fill your cup back up, because otherwise you're not doing anyone any favors.
Right. Thank you for that reminder. So, well, I appreciate the discussion. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
We hope this has been helpful today to understand some of the hidden weight of caregiving. If you find yourself in that situation, if you would like more information or more resources, please call Encore Compassionate Care at 336-427-9022.